And welcome back, everybody, to the Podcaster Nation. That's right, I said welcome back because I know you were just listening to our stuff and you came back because you wanted more. Folks, that's a fantastic decision. It was a brilliant move on your part because we have a lot more for you. Now, why do we have so much more for you? Because this is the podcast. It's about podcasters, it's for podcasters, and it's done by podcasters. And our guest today, amongst many, many other things, is, wait for it, a podcaster. See, you are brilliant. You folks, you know exactly why you're here and what you're talking about. Folks, this is the place where we all come together to raise each other up, and this is the place where the rising tide raises all ships. So let's get sailing and bring in our awesome guest today. I'm already having fun talking to this lady, and we haven't even hit record yet. So I think you're going to really enjoy this interview. She's got an awful lot to go over and offer. This lady is an author. She's a writing coach. She's the founder of the Creativity Lab, which we're going to hear about later. She has three different mystery series that are out there, and we're going to talk about those too. Please welcome to the show, Liz Mugavero. Liz, how you doing today?
Hey, Rory, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. I tell you what, there's a ton that we could dive into and
I
start
know.
anywhere. So I'm going to throw it to you real quick. Tell everybody just a little bit about who is Liz, kind of, what you're about and where you'd like to start.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, yes, I'm Liz. I'm also Kate Conti. I write under two names. My main identity, and this is probably not a good thing to admit because we're supposed to not identify ourselves by what we do, right? But I feel like my identity has always been a writer ever since I was very little. Well, first a reader and then a writer. And stories brought me so much joy that I was like, I have to do this. I really want to bring this much joy to people. So I've been a writer since I could basically figure out how to hold a pen and put stories on paper. So I now write mysteries because I also like to kill people. As much as I like to bring them joy, I also like to murder them. And so, yes, that's where we are. Yep, I write
Oh,
mysteries. And then I teach people how to write mysteries. So I like to, I like to spread the wealth, teach people how to kill other people and make it all make sense.
okay. All right. Not what I expected, but I mean, hey, great intro. I've heard some odd things, I don't know if I've ever heard that one, but hey, I love it because, I know that you're a mystery author. Writing mysteries seems like it would be a little bit different from a lot of other genres. And I assume you've found that. What makes writing mysteries different than writing some other kind of tale?
Yeah, I mean, it's just the puzzle aspect, And so for me, like when I say I kind of say this tongue in cheek that I have been obsessed with murderers and crime my entire life. Really, what I'm obsessed with is the why behind it. The very first murder case that I really got involved in, I was probably like 14 years old. I'm from the Boston area, and the Charles Stewart murder case was a big deal back
Mm.
then. If you don't know about it, you should check out. There's a great podcast that the Boston Globe did. There's also a documentary, fascinating case from like 1980, like early, sorry, late eight, I can't remember, sometime in the 80s. And it was this man who killed his pregnant wife and blamed a black man and got the whole city up in arms. And it was like this crazy witch hunt. And then he threw himself off a bridge when people started to realize that he had actually done it. So I was fascinated. It was my very first research paper. My grandfather had been a detective as well. And so I think crime is a little bit in my blood.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. That is a pretty big piece right there.
Yeah.
Did you grow up thinking that way then, or having that sort of that methodical solve the puzzle, thing as part of your upbringing, or did
Yeah.
you come up with this all on your own?
Well, I mean, my parents were pretty methodical, but in a different way. I think I read so much and I was really always drawn to like the Nancy Drew and the Trixie Belden and the, why did this happen? How did this happen? And how did we get from A to Z? And I always loved that.
Excellent. Okay. So it's the story behind it
Yeah.
that really kind of, gets you thinking, why did this happen? How did this work? How did they
Yeah.
put it together? Okay. That's fascinating. Interesting.
Yeah.
So you take that hunger and that passion for figuring out the puzzle and you put that into your writing.
Yeah, because part of the fun in mysteries is like you need to have a bunch of suspects, right? And so you've got like the crime, and then you've got the killer. Hopefully, in the current book I'm writing, I'm still a little foggy on the killer, but it's okay. We'll figure it out. But you have to have all these other suspects to make it interesting, right? So that means that everybody who's a suspect also has a secret that could potentially lead to murder, but doesn't necessarily lead to murder. And so it's just really a lot of fun figuring out like what's this person hiding and why might this make them the actual killer, and putting all those pieces together so people are coming along with you on that ride, and then ultimately getting to that final answer.
Nice. Okay. Now you've incorporated a lot of other interests into your writing and into your series. And I only say that because you were very open about what your interests were. And then here are three series that all kind of seem to match that just a little bit.
Yeah.
So, I can put a couple pieces together too. I'm no puzzle solver or detective or anything, but I get by. You've got three series, and one of them is the Cat Cafe Mysteries. Then
Mhm.
you've got the Full Moon Mysteries. And then you've got the positively organic mysteries. Okay.
Yes.
Which one came first? Let's start there.
So the Positively Organic series under my real name came first.
Okay.
And then so I had written a few books in the series, and I was already getting the reputation of being the cat girl. So my agent called me one day and said, "Hey, I've got another editor who's looking for a cat series." Because my first book came out in 2013. So cozy mysteries, which is the genre that these books are all in, were having kind of a resurgence back then. And cat mysteries were especially very popular. And so what that means is it's not like the cats aren't solving the mysteries or anything. It just means that there's a basically a hook where cats or something related to animals are kind of a big part of the story in addition to the murder. So in my case, in the first series, my protagonist was a corporate girl who got fired from her job and then had to go figure out a whole new life. And she ended up becoming a gourmet pet food chef because she started cooking meals for her cat who had digestive issues. And then it turned into a whole thing. So my agent calls me and says, "Hey, I have another editor who wants a cat book." And I said, "Great. What kind of a cat book?" And he said, "Well, she doesn't really know, but she just wants a cat book." And I said, "Okay, well, there's a lot of different ways we can go with this." That was a long story. It took us a little while to get to the perfect place, but that was also when cat cafes were starting to come to the US. They had originated in Japan and they were a big deal out there. And then they were starting to migrate over here as an idea. And so we ended up doing a cat cafe series.
Wow. So, I mean, cats are a thing. Like
Cats are
in
a thing.
writing, people
Yeah.
want a cat book.
People like animals. And I kind of laugh about it. It's like, yeah, we have to have a cat on the cover, but I think it's really that bond, right? That people who love animals understand the bond that people have with their animals. And so I think it just helps people relate to the characters more if if there's a bit, especially animal people, if there's a big animal presence in the book. So
Interesting. Now, the character itself is not a cat. It's not like an
there
animated
are
type
cats in
thing.
the book, but no, the cats aren't talking or doing any of that. I
No,
don't do that. There are books like that, and that's great, but that's just
that's
not
not
my
your
thing.
thing.
No.
I got you. All right. All right. So the first one was the Positively Organic Mysteries that was written as you, Liz. Got
Yes.
it. Second one was,
Cat Cafe Mysteries, which is still going on.
okay.
And then the Full Moon Mysteries came up. So when my first series ended, the Positively series, I started the Full Moon Mysteries. So that's about witches. So that's more of a paranormal cozy. There's still cats in it. They're not front and center, but there's a magical cat and a regular cat. So
Okay, got it. Yeah, you mentioned that it was about things that you were already interested in, your favorite things, witches, crystals, cats, moon phases, so on and so forth.
yeah.
This is stuff that's near and dear to your heart. So you're still writing about these things that you care deeply about.
Yes.
Got
Yeah.
it.
I love paranormal stuff. I love witches. I grew up in Massachusetts, like I said. And I went to college in Salem, Mass, which is
Hmm.
witch city, right? So I think I really picked that school because I wanted proximity to the whole witch history more so than the education. But yeah, I love stuff like that. I've been obsessed with crystals forever. This book series actually gave me a chance to just go crystal shopping and be able to write it off on my taxes, which was also lovely because I needed it all for research.
Wonderful. I mean, however you got to make it work, you make it
Yeah.
work. That's what we do when we're independent like this. So
Yeah.
I love that. Okay. So then, all right, I got you. Now, the last two were under your pen name, alter ego.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I've been dying to ask this question of people who use pen names, and I hope you'll indulge me.
Yeah.
And feel free to tell me to go jump in a lake if you don't want to answer it. But I have I've run into some folks who write under a pen name for sort of protection. Maybe they're writing something controversial, that type
Yeah.
of thing. But I've run into a few people who have an alter ego or a pen name, but then they're very open about saying, "This is me. This
Yeah.
is the pen name." So if you're not trying to keep it a secret, then why the pen name? And I'm sure there's a reason, but I'm just dying to figure it out. I got to put this puzzle together in my own head.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons, right? So I can speak to mine. So I actually never intended to publish under my real name because I have to give you credit. You are one of the only people who has ever pronounced it right from the get-go, but nobody can say my last name. So I was like, I don't want to, go through the hassle of people not even knowing, what my name is if I'm trying to be an author. But my first contract kind of came about so fast. I didn't even think of it. And then all of a sudden, next thing I knew, I was publishing under my name, which was fine.
Okay.
But then when I got the opportunity to write the Cat Cafe mysteries, it was with a different publishing house. And so they requested a pen name just because they wanted to kind of launch me as their debut author. So Cat Cafe series came out under Kate, and then that series started doing really well. So when my first series ended, and so my Full Moon series is with my original publisher, where I published under Liz. They asked the other publishing house if they could use the Kate Conti. I'm getting myself confused now. The Kate Conti name for that series because the books were selling well on the Cat Cafe side. So that's how I ended up with Kate Conti. Now, I will say I am working on something that is a little outside of this genre, and I expect I'll publish that under a different name, just because sometimes people, um, they know you under a certain name, they know what you write, so they might be looking for that same type of book if they're looking at your name. And if you're writing a completely different book, you don't maybe necessarily want to surprise them with something that they weren't expecting.
Interesting. Okay. So part of it is a marketing
Yeah.
situation. That's
Yeah.
okay. Thank you for the answer. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. I've always kind of wondered about it. But now, another thing that struck me as a little different, because I do interview a lot of authors, who also are podcasters or guests or whatnot. But I've never, I don't think, run into anybody who had different publishers. I've had people who had a publisher or a hybrid and self-publishing, those, types of things. But it's unique to me anyway to have someone who is working with different publishing houses. So how did that happen, and why the change? Like, why wouldn't one of the publishers go, "Hey, I want all your stuff," as opposed to someone else coming in and poaching you and saying, "No, we want this." That just seems like one publisher house or the other one would be a little mad.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way. So, like I said, the second publishing house wanted these types of books, and there's no, as far as I know, there's no rule that says you can't publish with multiple houses. Obviously, in my case, there wasn't. So the only criteria was when I used the Kate Conti name with my original publisher, the house that kind of owns the name had a stipulation where the books had to come out within a certain, they couldn't come out too close together, basically. So there had to be I forget what, maybe 6 months in between, at least 6 months in between when a book from one house was released versus when another house was released. So it all depends, right? If this was kind of what was happening a lot back then, I think, especially
Hmm,
with this genre. But you're right, there's a lot of houses that want everything that someone's doing, and I guess it just kind of comes about differently. Maybe it's related to genre. I don't know.
sure.
Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, it's my own limited experience, and looking into it and so on and so forth. So I guess I sort of just thought that if you were signed with an author, not an author, but a publishing house, an actual publisher, that they kind of owned everything, the rights to everything, so to speak.
Yeah, no, I mean sometimes they like you said, they want everything, right? Other times it might just not be a fit. It might be a completely different type of book. They might pass on it. Often the original publisher will get the first right of refusal for something new, but then if they say they don't want it, then it's fair game to go somewhere else.
Great. So is this like credit to a fantastic book agent on your part who basically left you open to do all these things and negotiated some
Yeah,
shrewd contract?
absolutely. Absolutely.
That's awesome. All
More
right.
more so he was just like, "Hey, I have the cat girl. If you want a cat book, let's call her."
There you go. Just flew it out there. I have the cat girl.
Yep.
Who wants her? Oh, that's awesome. All right, that's perfect. So somewhere in the middle of all this fantastic writing and these successful series, and you like just realizing all of these awesome things that you love being portrayed in all of your books. I mean, sounds like you're having a great time. Somewhere in the middle of all that, you go, let's go this direction and start a podcast. Like,
Yeah.
where'd that come from? What's the story there?
Yeah, I love podcasting. So I've always been writing my books off the side of my desk. I've always had full-time jobs and I've done other things. And so back in like 2019-ish, I was like kind of getting to the point where, I'm like, I got to figure out what to do without maybe this full-time job. So,
Good
um,
for you.
so I started thinking about what that might look like. And, I ended up, this was very early days of like just kind of figuring out the membership that I have right now, like working with newer writers, trying to help people who wanted to break into writing. Cause I go to a lot of conferences and meet a lot of people who are trying to, get into the business. And I remember doing those things myself. And you just kind of want to help people and pay it forward and make life maybe easier on them than it was for you when you were coming up. So I started thinking about ways in which I could do that. And I came up with this membership idea, which led me to, thinking about, how am I going to get, aside from my books, how am I going to get in front of more people? And podcasting just seemed to be a great answer to that. I loved podcasts from a long time ago. I mean, from back when Serial was a thing. The original Serial. And I had done at one of my full-time jobs, my team had created a podcast. I had hosted it and I just had a lot of fun with it, And so I was like, why don't do a podcast? So, and then I was like, also, it's a great way to be able to, spend time with writers. And so, yeah, so I started the podcast and it just became a way of getting, getting the word out and also introducing people to other writers and also introducing people to the ideas that there's so many different ways to get into the publishing world. There's so many different ways to write. Like you don't have to follow one plan. Like nobody has the keys to the kingdom, that kind of thing. Like just helping people realize that however you're doing it and whatever your process is, you're good. And there's like just so much opportunity out there.
Nice. Whenever you start a project, any of them, from that servant mindset of wanting to, contribute, help, lift people up, that are behind you, that type of thing, it almost always works out in some way. So,
Yeah.
you definitely had your heart in the right spot when you started the whole thing. And I don't doubt that. I've listened to your podcast, so you can tell how much you really enjoyed doing it when you're listening to it. And that's also kind of a gift. Because you're not new. So you don't have the honeymooner phase going on or anything with it.
Yeah.
You've got 139 episodes. You've
Yeah.
been doing it for several years at this
Yeah.
point. Um, and you're still going strong, still out there coming across like you're just having a blast with this whole thing,
Thank you.
which I love. So I really enjoyed listening to some of your episodes on there. Now you do a lot of interviews. You do some solo episodes too, and you
Mhm.
do a lot of interviews. So when you're bringing these authors on, is the idea just to give them, some publicity and that type of thing, or what are you looking for in the interview with the author?
Yeah, so it's expanded a little bit, as time has gone on. So I started out with a really heavy focus on mysteries because that's what I love. That's what I do. That's like the majority of the authors I know.
Mhm.
And so and also it's fascinating to me, like we were talking about before, just the whole idea of, how people put puzzles together because there's so many different ways to do it. And, there's always debates about, do you plot it out? Do you let it happen? All those things. I love all of that. And then along the way, I was like, I should probably, broaden my interview slate a little bit because I do have a really good friend, for example, who writes memoir, and I know people I've talked to that listen have expressed interest in nonfiction and that kind of thing. So I joined Podmatch, which matches you up with people.
Absolutely.
Where you and I met. And so that actually really opened up a lot of doors too. So I've had poets on, I've had nonfiction people, I've had, people who write different kinds of fiction without mysteries, no murders, which to me is fascinating too. Like, how do you put a story together without a body? Like, I can't even imagine. So
That's great.
yeah, so it's just another way to get, different perspective on the show and help people who might, like to listen to the show, but maybe don't want to write a mystery. Maybe they like to hear about, historical fiction or whatever it is.
Incredible. Okay, great. I love it. Because I listened to several of, whenever I'm researching a podcast for someone to come on this show, I try to pick things from different time frames. So you go all the way back and then you get from the middle, maybe a little more, and you kind of catch the progression and, maybe some of the changes, that are making. So you've definitely come a long way from,
Well, thank you.
episode one for sure.
Yeah.
But now I'm curious. Everybody works their podcasting and books, and there's courses, and there's public speaking. Everybody has their pillars, their foundation of what they're doing independently out here in this world.
Yeah.
You've got the books, of course, which are a solid pillar of your foundation. You've added the podcast, which sounds like it's pretty solid. So, how do you work the promotion I'm assuming the publisher does something for promoting your books. I'm sure well, I know you do that on your podcast as well. Do you promote the podcast as well? How does that work? How do you do that?
Yeah. So it's so funny. So in my other life, I work in marketing and communications, and I'm really good at it,
There
but
you
I'm really
go.
good at it for other people. So,
Oh, no.
so when it comes to me, there's weeks that go by where I'm like, damn it, I haven't done any promotion on anything for myself. I've been doing it for, all the people I'm working with. So there is that problem, which is
Guilty.
something,
Yeah,
yeah, which is
100%.
something that I am determined in 2026 to do better. So yeah, there's that. But I try to do a balance of, but I definitely promote my books when they're coming out. I promote them around, I have certain books that I do like to write on occasion, like a holiday themed. So I have a couple of books that take place around Halloween, a couple of Christmas ones. So I try to remember to do the right promotion for that. I try to promote the podcast weekly as I'm releasing episodes. I'm not always successful at it, but I do. The good news is I have a backlog of content, right? That I can just keep promoting. But yeah, I try to do a balance. I have so much to work with that sometimes it is overwhelming of like where to start.
Right. Well, and you just are self-professed that you have that you're a marketing person behind the
Yeah.
scenes.
Yes.
So do you use primarily social media for this sort of thing? What has worked and for
Yeah.
you, and what really has been a waste of time for you?
I really have this love-hate with social media. I try to approach it positively and say, "Hey, great, I get this opportunity to do all of this promotion for free." I mean, I can choose to pay for ads if I want to, but basically
Right.
it's free, right? I can do that. But I also find it really draining because then, I'm kind of one of those all or nothing people. So I look at like I need to be on all these channels, I need to be doing all of these things. I have to get on video. And then I start to think, oh my God, I don't have time for this because I actually have to write books. And so last year I started a Substack where I thought this could be a really interesting endeavor because it's a writing platform. And so in addition to having writers at my disposal to talk to and hopefully connect with, there's also the opportunity for me to share other types of writing. And so I've been playing around with Substack and my approach there, but that's actually been really successful for me. And so what I've been thinking about going forward for 2020 is really just focusing on my long form content. So my Substack and the podcast, and then just doing the social media from there instead of like my usual hair on fire at the beginning of the month, like, oh my God, what's my Instagram strategy for the month? Because I've neglected it for the past 2 months. Right. So,
Interesting. Okay. All right. I appreciate, the honesty. That's cool. It's funny because a lot of us who sort of teach that end up being the worst ones in the world for
yeah.
ourselves.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I feel the pain for sure that you're talking about over there. Um, and I appreciate that. Is there anything, like I said, that really has just been, you thought maybe it was a waste of time? Maybe you haven't, hit that, but I just like to let folks know if there's something where it's like, man, I did this, but this was bad.
I mean, I don't know if anything's like a waste of time. I feel like for a long time I don't know why I've been fixated on Instagram, and I'm like, I've got to get my following up on Instagram, and it's just not fast. Like it creeps up, and it's like, oh, it goes up more than it goes down, which is good, but it's like, is this really moving any kind of needle at all, kind of thing?
Yeah.
I hesitate to say it's a waste of time because I don't know, but it's sometimes for the mental effort that I'm putting into it, it doesn't really seem like it's
Fair.
getting it. Yeah.
I should rephrase that into more of a bang for your buck type of,
Yeah.
question. Even though we're not putting out bucks, we're doing it for free with sweat labor. But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, no, I get it. Um, I always ask folks if they've had a chance to monetize their podcasts. Now, clearly, you've got your books, so those are monetized. Those are through a publisher. You mentioned a membership. So, is that a way of monetizing your podcast? How has that worked, and what can you tell us about that? And of course, you don't have to let any secret sauce out for everybody else,
Yeah,
But
no, that's totally separate from the podcast. I'm still trying to figure out honestly how to, I just haven't spent a lot of time on the monetization of the podcast, which is also something that in 2026 I really want to focus on because I do love doing it. And so I'd love to see it grow. The membership is a little bit different. So under the writing coach hat that I wear, I started out with I'm going to do a membership for writers, and this kind of came from again that idea of helping other writers. So there was a specific actually thing that triggered this. I was at a conference, one of my original conferences that I love to go to, a mystery conference. And I had been asked to, participate in these roundtables where authors, agents, and editors would like sit at a little table with some new writers, and they would, critique somebody's like first page or something. And so I was at this table. There was an editor there, and there was another agent, and then a couple of writers. And somebody had, read their first page aloud. And I just remember I can't remember if it was, I think it was the editor from like a small press. She just pooped all over this lady's work in the sense of like, well, your premise, nobody's going to buy that. And the premise was something related to like an older protagonist or something. And I think it was a cozy. I don't remember the details, but I just remember like thinking, like, wow. First of all, I knew it was not public news yet, but I had a friend who had just signed a contract for a book series featuring an older protagonist. So I'm like, okay, so yes, we know people in the publishing world are smart and they know things, but they also don't know everything, and they also can't tell the future, and they don't have a crystal ball. And so for someone to do that, like, it just didn't feel right to me. And that was not how I came up in I don't remember having an experience like that, because I think it would have really impacted me if I had. And I just felt like some of these poor people are getting direction that may not be good, and so where are they going to find someone to kind of guide them and keep them motivated and help them? And that was really where my membership idea came from. So it's a place where people can come. It's a monthly membership, or there's also an annual option. I've just recently added in a quarterly option because I like to do kind of seasonal themes and topics too. But it's really a place to do some co-writing. We do a few different sessions a month. We do a little woo stuff. We do some tarot cards. We do a writer's seance around a full moon or a new moon every month. But it's basically for accountability. It's for just putting some time on the calendar, getting some work done, and it's a support system, is how I like to describe it. So, and also people can, we do a little group coaching. People can pick my brain about publishing, that kind of thing. So I just wanted to give people a place where they could get some straight answers, you know what I mean? Without like, I know everything and I don't think you should do that. That's no, that just really bothered me. I didn't like that. So that's where the membership came from. And
Interesting.
then, yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, please go ahead if you had something else to add. That was
No, that's really it. I was just starting to babble, I think.
okay. Well, there's no babbling here. I mean, everything has value. So if you're thinking of it, just spit it out. It's all good. But okay, so it's a paid membership. You offer different
Yes.
options, and it's basically about writing, which makes sense too with everything you've done.
Yeah.
So, um, looking at your entire, if you view everything you're doing as a business platform,
Yeah.
what is what's the best way you can describe what the podcast does for you in relation to everything else you're doing?
Yeah, the podcast is part of my funnel, really. So it's that weekly content that hopefully is getting people's attention and getting them into my world. And I think audio is so much better. You're hearing people's voice, or video, but I'd rather not have to edit video every week. So we went with the podcast. But just hearing people's voices, like getting to kind of know them on that level, I think is a way to bring people so much closer. People might love my writing and love to read the Substack. That's great, but also I feel like that this is just another deeper level of almost intimacy, right? Where someone can get to know you by listening to you and having a conversation.
Nice. I love that. Using a podcast for like next level lead generation is something that so many people miss. And I mean, that's very astute to be using it that way. So power to you, because that's a great way to utilize what you're doing. And you're right. It's a great way to build that rapport with people one on one, instead of just having it be some cold messaging,
Yeah.
or an email that was unsolicited, that never
Yeah.
gets opened.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's slower, but it's much more effective.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great way to use it. Very cool.
Thank you.
Very cool. All right. I always ask a corny question. I got to get this in there.
Okay.
So get ready, put on your seatbelt. Here
All
it
right.
comes. This is really tough to answer. All right. When it comes to doing the podcast, what is it about doing the podcast that you love the most? And what is it about doing the podcast that you just absolutely can't stand, throw it out the window, dislike the most?
I love talking to people, and I love hearing about everyone's experience as a writer, because I can talk to, however many episodes you said I had, I can't even remember, 130 something.
139.
Yeah. Like 139 people, you'll never find the same journey. You'll never find the same process. Like it's just fascinating to me. And I learn something every time. And so I feel like it's just so exciting to be able to share that. So I love that. I think the worst is like the scheduling and the dealing with that whole thing, like going through the pod match requests and figuring out who might be a good fit. And then I always do like a meet and greet, right? Because I don't know, I just don't feel comfortable. Like somebody can pitch me a great thing and I can think, oh yeah, that's going to be a great episode, but I still want to meet you first because you never know, right? And so I just don't want to commit my time until I know that the person's going to be a good fit. So I always have a meet and greet before we schedule anything. So I think a lot of that back end scheduling stuff is time consuming,
Hmm.
worth it, but time consuming.
Yeah, definitely time consuming. Great answer, and that's why I don't do that actually.
Yeah.
So, did it make you feel uneasy coming on this show since we don't do a meet and greet? I'm
No,
just
it
curious.
doesn't. When I'm a guest, it doesn't bother me.
Huh.
It's so weird. But when I'm the host, it's like, no, like I feel like I know my listeners. I feel like people trust me to bring them somebody of value, right?
Yeah.
Or somebody that they can relate to. And if somebody, because I have had a couple of times where even in the meet and greet, something slid past me. And then I get on the actual podcast and I'm like, shoot, this isn't going to be the greatest fit for my listeners.
Mm, yeah. I love that because there is a lot more responsibility as a host than there is as a guest.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. When you're a guest, it's you know your story.
Yeah.
You know what questions you can handle. They're not going to get anything by you. You know you, so you're good
Yeah.
in that seat. When you're the host, you have a lot more that you're responsible for, and so
Yeah.
there's a lot more pressure, isn't it?
Yes, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, very cool. I love that you recognize that, though. I also think it's just adorable that you don't know how many episodes you have on this very successful podcast of yours. You're like, I don't know, 130 something. What was it? I can't keep track. Yeah.
I'm like, just keep going. Every week there's a new one.
I mean, 139, it's not like,
Yeah.
oh, I have like, eight. I don't remember,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
139, you've been doing this for a minute. So
I
congratulations on
have.
that too.
Thank you.
Yeah, you got past the first three sort
Yeah.
of, milestones. It's like 20, 50, 100. I mean, now it's smooth sailing right now till
Yeah. Oh,
250.
yeah.
So you're good to
Definitely.
go. That's right. I'm looking forward to seeing that. That's wonderful. So in the course of doing the podcast, though, you do a meet and greet, you do kind of a screening, right?
Yes.
So what does that look like for you in your world? Is that just a pre-interview? How long is it, and what are you trying to kind of weed out?
Yeah, it's usually like 15 minutes or so. I like to hear, hopefully I'll get a good sense of what they're doing and their work, from the pitch that they send. But I just want to kind of talk to them, just kind of get a feel for how they speak. So I used to be a journalist, so I love interviewing. So interviewing for me is pretty easy, but I feel like I just like to get a feel for somebody, to kind of know how to approach the conversation. So, I've had some people who seem very comfortable with like, hey, we're not going to do a scripted thing. We're just going to talk. And other people who are like, I don't know about that. Right? So just kind of getting an idea of like how people like to tell their story.
Excellent. Okay. That's cool. So does everybody have to be an author, or can they like just be a writer also?
Yeah, yeah, just a writer. Yeah. Well, just a
Okay.
writer. I mean, no one's just a writer, right? But
Well,
yeah, no,
sure.
they don't have to be. No, and I have a lot. I've talked to a few people, people who are, you know, pitching their first poetry book or, pitching their memoirs or things like that. So yeah, it's all about writers who all levels. So I've also had people who were in my membership. It was after the first year that I did something for National Novel Writing Month, which we're not really doing that much with anymore, but we're trying to keep that same idea of the November marathon of writing. But
Hmm.
I had some writers who were new to writing who had just done that for the first time, and kind of sharing their experience with how it felt for them, what they worked on, like how much progress they made in their book in that really condensed month of writing. So yeah, I'll
Excellent.
level.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, and I guess the way I look at it is an author is someone who's written the book, but then a writer, is writing on Substack and might have a blog and that type of thing. But I also kind of look at it like For instance, you're an author. I mean, anybody who looks behind you, okay, in the video sees what you've accomplished. My goodness, it's I should have had you keep that down because it's a little intimidating to look at. Starting to have a self-confidence issue over here.
No.
But I've written two books, but I don't consider myself an author. I
No?
consider myself a podcaster who has
Okay.
written two books.
Okay. Okay.
You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, well, here's the thing too. We talk about writers and authors sometimes interchangeably, but if you're writing anything, you're a writer. That's the part you can control, right? You can't necessarily control, depending on how you want to publish, if you want to be in traditional publishing or what have you, you can't control that part. You can't control whether you're going to be a full-time, highly paid, successful published author. You can't control whether you're going to be a published author at all unless you self-publish, right? So I like to kind of make that distinction between the writer's journey, the author's journey, because it's very different.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
part of
for
it
sure.
is in your control and part of it is not.
I love that. I haven't heard that designation that way, but that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Beautiful. So I have to ask, and I hate even bringing it up because, man, I really, really dislike AI. But everybody always wants to know. So,
Yeah.
do you utilize AI in any way in any of your writing or your podcasting? If so, how do you utilize it? And what's your feeling on it?
Yeah. I mean, look, everyone's worried about it. Everyone at first I was kind of like, should I be worried about this? But as a marketer also, right? I'm still working in I do consulting, so I still do marketing and communications. And so just kind of also looking at it from that lens, there's a lot of angst about AI on that side. And then some people are really using it well. I think it's about I hate to sound cliche because a lot of people say this, but it's like learning to work with it, right? I would never say to AI, "Oh shit, I'm behind in my." Oh, sorry, I don't know if I can say that on
You're
here.
okay.
I'm behind in my book. Can you write my next chapter for me? No, but I will take my podcast episode and the summary that I wrote for it and put it into AI and say, okay, turn this into a social media post. And I still have to edit the crap out of it, but at least it's like saving me that initial time of like taking that draft and having to consolidate and having to condense it and all of that. So in that way, it's been helpful to kind of cut down on some of that repurposing time.
Mhm.
Because if you take your original thing, you put it in there and have it chop it up, then you just need to do some moving around and making sure it's in your voice kind of thing. And you've got some ready-made stuff that you don't have to spend a ton of extra time on. So that's been a little helpful for me.
Okay. Interesting, different perspectives based on, which hat you have on, so to
Yeah.
speak. But all right, I can appreciate that. And I appreciate the answer to the question. Everybody who listens to any of my podcasts knows that I just don't like it.
Yeah.
I'm that
It's
old
just,
guy that just, the purist who's like, "Ugh."
yeah, it's understandable. But listen, this is also interesting. So, all right. So let me put my author hat on for a second and let me go back to that
Yeah.
question. So my books are part of that Anthropic settlement. You might have heard about this, where so Anthropic had taken a bunch of books and used it to train their models. And so
Oh,
there's a
okay.
big lawsuit. And so my books are actually 10 of my books were involved in that suit. So I'm in the process of filing a bunch of claims against Anthropic, because they're working with pirated material. Okay, so
Right.
that's the author hat. And then on the other side, I have used it in a couple of ways where I'm stuck on something in my book and I've got a plot point that's not making sense. So I've gone in and I've said, all right, I have this situation. What could I do next? Right. And just almost used it as like a writer's room. And most of the time it's kind of cliched crap that you get back, but every now and then there'll be like a little gem where I'm like, oh, that's a thread I can pull and maybe go this way. So I've used it when my brain is feeling burnt and I'm like in need of some kind of and I don't have a friend readily available where I can call and say, oh my God, my character is stuck on a pier in Boston and they're supposed to be at a little town in Connecticut. Help, how do I get them off the pier? Um, I've used it like that too. So it's almost
Interesting.
like a little improv writer's room.
Got it. Okay. Hey, yeah, again, I love your different perspectives. So thanks for putting the author's hat on, for a
Yeah.
minute on that one. That's really cool. And I hope you win the lawsuit. I really do. But I've heard, I mean, I think I heard some little tidbit about how that was going on because they kind of went
Yeah.
in and took a bunch of, like, taught AI with everybody's
Yeah.
books. Well, then that
Yeah.
means that you just took everybody's stuff
Yeah, absolutely.
and
So they are
figured,
settling. So we are getting a
yeah,
settlement. So yeah, so we're in
good.
the process of we have to fill out the claim. The publisher gets some, we get some, but it's a whole thing. But yes, they did settle. So they're paying out a lot of money.
Good for you. All right.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations ahead of
Thanks.
time. I think it's fantastic. And protect your work because it's
Yeah.
important. Very
Of
cool.
course. Of course.
All right. Listen, I appreciate all the time you've put in here and as open as you've been about everything. I do have one more question for you. And before we do that, I want to make sure I get the contact info out. And I also want to make sure that we talk about this really cool class that you have coming up. Tell us about the writing class that you're doing for, I think, teaching people how to write mysteries.
Yeah, so I have a masterclass that I launch. This will be my third cohort that I'm launching. It's called the Mindful Mystery Writers Masterclass, and really it teaches people how to structure a mystery and the different things that go into creating a mystery, what you need to have. We talked about suspects and red herrings and clues and all that, so it covers all of that. And the goal is to get people to walk away with an outline of a book, especially if they've had an idea and they just don't know how to kind of put that into a formula, if you would, in order to get it done. But the other part of it is I also teach people how to be able to keep that momentum going after the class. So creating a sustainable writing practice and some things that you can do to set yourself up so writing becomes part of your daily life without it overpowering everything else. You know, people think that you need 8 hours to be a writer, 8 hours a day to be a writer. You don't. It would be lovely, but also it wouldn't be because I've had the opportunity to do that. And honestly, I don't get anything more done than when I have 2 hours a day to be a writer. So it's really teaching people how to look at time, how
Yeah.
to prioritize their writing, and like how to get in that mindset of like getting themselves unblocked in order to be able to create. So
Cool. Sounds like amazing, help and a really good workshop for people who want to do that. So that's fantastic. Now, when is it? How long is the workshop? When does it take place?
yeah, so it's going to start in January 19th. It's a 6 week class. So there's 5 weeks of modules, and then I put an implementation week in the middle where people can get some work done. We have a lot of interactions where people can ask a lot of questions, that kind of thing. So it runs about 6 weeks.
Got it. So they have to have bought into it before it launches. Is kind of
Yeah.
the deal. And then you're
Yeah.
closing the door on people. Got it.
Yes.
All right. And you're opening the door January 6th for this?
Yes. Hmm.
All right. So when the podcast, if you're listening to this right now, folks, it is between these dates and you need to go find this. So you can sign up for it. And if you're looking to go find it, you can find it where, Liz?
KateConti.com. Kate with a C.
Got it. KateConti.com. And we'll make sure that's in the show notes also for people to sign up for the class. So that's really cool. Perfect.
Thank you.
All right. Do you have any particular social that you like to connect with people on or just go to
Yes.
the website?
So this is where I get, so all my socials linked on my website. This is where I never know who I am because I do most of my social under Liz Mugavero now because that's kind of where I'm running the business from, but I'm also writing under Kate Conti right now, so it's a little confusing, but it's all on the website, so you can
Got
find me
it. We'll keep
there.
it there. We'll
Yeah,
just keep it all on the website. Keep it
yeah,
all simple. All right. All right, Liz, I love this. And again, thank you for everything you've done that you are doing. I've really enjoyed talking to you. Last question. All right. I mean, even though you can't remember how many episodes you have. All right. At 139 episodes, you've been through a few things building
yeah.
this podcast up, and it's impressive. So what is your best piece of advice for podcasters who are out there who are not quite where you are yet?
Yeah. I think it's the same advice that I would give to somebody who wants to be a writer, just keep going. And the second part of that is do it authentically. So just like you wouldn't write a book because some agent or editor said, "Oh, I think next week we're going to see a rise in zombie books, so you should go write a zombie book." No, if you don't want to write a zombie book, that will be a terrible book. So if you don't want to do a podcast on, pick a subject, don't do it on that. Do something that's authentic to you.
Great, great advice. I love that. And that's great advice for everything that you're
Yeah.
doing. So wonderful. Perfect. All right, folks. Author, writing coach, founder of the Creativity Lab, and has a fantastic course coming up, which we're going to have in the show notes. Liz Mugavero. Liz, absolutely wonderful to have you on today. Thank you so much for everything you did. And it's really been great.
Thank you, Rory. I had a great time.
Thank you so much. Folks, this has been another awesome episode of The Podcaster Nation. The reason why we get these powerful podcasters on here with these great messages is because this is the podcast that's about podcasters, it's for podcasters, and it's done by podcasters. Folks, we proved yet again today that this is the place where the rising tide truly raises all ships. So keep sailing.